Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Teen Talk Central. On this week's episode, we're talking all about the importance of sleep. This is such an important topic for high schoolers and people our age, so if you want to listen or, you want to learn about sleep and the importance, then continue listening to this week's episode. Hey y'all, it's Mia, welcome back. It's a new week, actually not a new month, but it's a new week. That's basically all I wanted to say. But this week we're talking about sleep, and I think that the reason why I wanted to talk about sleep is because I've kind of realized that a lot of people they always say oh my god, sleep is super important, yada yada, but they don't really know why sleep is super important, and most people don't understand the kind of psychological reasons why sleep is super important. So obviously it's super normal for teens to feel exhausted. We have late nights, early mornings, the blue light from the screens, stress, everything. So this isn't really just about the idea of sleeping earlier, because that's just not going to fix everything. I think a lot of us are exhausted and we've been taught to learn how to ignore it. So I want to give you guys some psychological advice and also tell you guys why sleep is super important, which can maybe change your mindset or idea on sleep. So let's get started. The first one is that I feel like sleep is always the first thing that we sacrifice. With school pressures, social lives, and our phones and stuff, the first thing we think of is I don't need to have 9 hours of sleep today. And then this in the productivity culture, in the productivity world, I think rest is seen as optional, and it's you don't have to. I think you see some influencers promoting I'm clubbing at 1 a.m. but then I wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to go to my 5:30 a.m. Pilates class or something, and that is just not what you should be doing. And there's this fear of falling behind, and then when you're stressed, the brain prioritizes short-term tasks over long-term health. So they don't think as much about I need my 8 hours of sleep, and then you kind of start going into what's called sleep debt, which I'll kind of explain further on. So what does your brain actually do when it's sleeping? I feel not a lot of people know this. If you've taken AP Psych, you definitely know this. But basically, in 3 short kind of bullets, the sleep helps with memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and focus and decision making. And it basically allows you to take the memories that you've taken throughout the day and condenses that information into kind of more easy to figure out ideas, which will then later help you when you're studying. Which is why sometimes people say I can cram for a test, but you're not actually going to absorb and remember that information long term because you're not giving your brain enough time to consolidate those memories. And the lack of sleep doesn't just make you tired, but it makes your emotions heavier and stress a lot harder to manage, which is why people get cranky when they become sleep deprived. And sleep deprivation kind of ties into what's called sleep debt. So basically, it's just any type of other debt you have. If you don't pay off your credit card, you start to go more and more into debt. If you don't basically pay off your sleep credit card, you go more and more into debt. So if you're supposed to have 8 hours of sleep, but you only slept 4 hours, now you're 4 hours into sleep debt, so now you need to sleep 12 hours to feel good. Also, I think some people think I need 9 hours of sleep. Not everybody needs 9 hours of sleep, but that's what's kind of recommended. But there's a bunch of different ways to figure out what your ideal sleep time is. One of the things I know people do is they drink a bunch of water, and then whenever they wake up from the time they went to sleep, however that much is apparently your ideal sleep time, because if you wake up needing to pee, that means your body's awake enough to kind of sense the urge to pee. The next thing is that kind of we talked about your emotions, anxiety increases with sleep deprivation, and mood swings feel a lot more intense, and burnout becomes a lot higher because sleep helps regulate the amygdala, which is the emotional center of our brain, and less sleep equals stronger emotional reactions. So like I said, that's why people who are sleep deprived have a lot of sometimes they're really angry or groggy, that's why. So if you get more sleep, the less chances you are that you will be groggy. And then one of the big things that causes sleep is sleep deprivation is the sleep and the phone cycles, basically like doom scrolling, and the idea of like, oh, I can just watch like one more video, and then your blue light and dopamine. So like blue light definitely, it's been starting to show that like, oh, the blue light's not that good for you, which is why a lot of people wear blue light glasses to try to prevent the blue light in their eyes. And there's this like, the phones delay sleep because they stimulate the reward system of dopamine, and it's basically like dopamine like is that feel good hormone, so then you're like, oh, I want to continue to like feel this like dopamine boost. So that's kind of why you can't fall asleep as easily with the phones, and it's not because of a lack of discipline, it's literally because your body's like craving this dopamine and this reward, and the blue light makes it hard to fall asleep. Inconsistent sleep schedules really confuse the body, which is another huge factor of why catching up on sleep is super hard, and another reason why sleep debt is a huge deal. And weekend, a lot of people are like, oh, like I'm gonna wake up, you know, early every single weekday, and then on the weekends I'm gonna like do a weekend sleep in, and that doesn't really fix exhaustion. That's kind of just like temporarily holding it off because you're still in so much debt that you can't repay it all at once, and then every time you have to like pay with interest basically. And that's why you're always going to be tired, even if you're like, oh, I got 10 hours of sleep, but I'm still tired. Why? That's why. So now I want to talk about like what healthy sleep actually looks like. So it's definitely consistency over perfection, and you don't have to be perfect every single day, but you should start to, you know, if you usually get 5 hours of sleep, try to aim for, you know, 5.5, 6 hours, and then 6.5, and then 7 hours, and then 8, and slowly kind of wind your way up. It doesn't have to be 9 hours every single day, obviously. That's impossible, or maybe it is for you. I don't know. Not possible for me, but I try to get about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Another thing is using a mouth tape. I will link my favorite mouth tape in the description box, but it's from this brand called ViO2 mouth tape. Literally the best thing ever, and it's definitely helped me. I feel like I'm more relaxed and rested after my sleep. So I 10 out of 10 recommend that mouth tape because it's made by a doctor. It's basically to help you feel better in your sleep and feel more rested with your sleep. Another thing is like creating like a small wind down routine. So, you know, like 30 minutes before, I'm gonna put my phone away so I don't look at it. I'm gonna put it in another room. I've been like charging my phone in another room because I feel like I get really distracted on it. And then, you know, use the reset as a form of self-respect, and understand that sleep is really not a waste of time. It's literally recovery for your body. Also, if you like love to work out and stuff, sleeping is basically when your muscles are growing, and like that is when you are like developing your body, so that's also really important. And you don't really need to earn the rest. Your brain already deserves it because your brain is literally constantly running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So sleep is basically like the closest thing you have to like full rest for your body. So you should really give it to yourself because it, you know, your body and your brain really deserves it. And I think the idea that like, oh, like I don't want to sleep a lot and I just want to, you know, I just want to live a lot of life and I don't care about my sleep, I can always catch up to sleep later. I think that idea is something that we have to kind of start to steer away from because everyone definitely needs sleep, and sleep is 100% super important. So I recommend that everyone always gets at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Some people might need 9 or 10, but you can definitely also look up on Google like how to figure out exactly how many hours of sleep I need. And also, if you don't know how to like know how many hours of sleep you get, I would recommend getting some sort of fitness tracker like a Garmin or a Fitbit, Apple Watch, or a Ring, any of those, because those can kind of help tell you what time you're going to sleep and then what time you're waking up, and you know when your sleep cycles are, because that's also really cool to see like, oh, what stages am I in REM sleep. REM sleep is like memory consolidation, that's when your dreams are all happening. So stuff like that is really helpful, and I really like to see kind of how well I slept. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Teen Talk Central. I will have the mouth tape link down below. It's my favorite mouth tape ever. I've been using it for like a couple months now. The best thing. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, definitely share it to a friend. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys in next week's episode of Teen Talk Central. Bye.